All right, everybody. Thank you for joining this session on the Angel Flight mobile app. So a lot of people provided feedback when we were asking for suggestions for the retreat and the sessions to do like an app 101. So that's kind of how I'm going to treat this. I'm just going to walk people through how to use the app, assuming you kind of know nothing about it and you're starting from scratch. If we have some time at the end, I'd love to hear any suggestions that you might have for the app. And then at any time, really, during the session, you can type comments into the chat. If you have ideas already or additional questions. And the other thing I would say is that if you're having specific problems like logging in or that type of thing, I'm going to hand you over to John, who does member services and helps people with those kinds of issues. It's difficult to troubleshoot those things live, so I'd love to do that with people one-on-one. All right, so let's get started. So I've got this view of my app here, which hopefully will be pretty clear. So let's just start with what if you don't have the app yet? So I happen to be on an Android device, but we do have Android and iOS versions. And so you would go to the Play Store and you would look up Angel Flight West and then install it from there. That process is the same on the Apple App Store. So once you install it, you would log in, and your login is going to be the same credentials that you use for the web application, which you would hopefully already have. Again, if you have any problems with logging into the mobile app or with your password on the web app, then please give John a ring. You can reach him either at member.info@angelflightwest.org. You can call the office, or he's also at johnj@angelflightwest.org. So when you do successfully log in, then this is the screen you'll see. The three main functions here under the flights menu, which is kind of the thing that you'll land on. And I think that there's two main things that I think the app is really useful for. The first is for finding missions to fly or drive if you're a driver. And then the second is to manage your information that you need on the day of the trip. So I think the second thing is probably the most useful thing, because obviously you'll be out at the airport with your plane and your car, and you'll be on the go. So this is a place where you can get all the information about your flight kind of at your fingertips. So first, let's talk about finding available flights using the app. So the top link here is the available missions, and really it's this very similar to the available missions list on the web app. So if you've used that, you'll see the flights listed here in a very similar fashion, where you'll see all the legs of the mission. You'll see some of them might be filled, and then you'll see a button to request the flight if you're interested in it. If you're looking for more details about the weights and the passengers and so forth, you can use this details link, and that brings up pretty much everything you need to know, including the breakdown of all the passengers and their weights and the baggage, all the routing and so forth. I'll also point out that there's this important considerations field, which is also in the web app. That is a particular call out to any information that the coordinators really want to make you aware of. So for example, it might be something like a wheelchair, medical equipment that needs to go along with the flight. And in this case, the fact that they're primarily Spanish speaking. So if you do in fact want to request the flight from here, you would press the request button. You again get kind of the details about the flight. If you're requesting as a pilot, there'll be some questions in here about FBOs and things like that. I'll do that in an example. This happens to be an Earth Angel leg. So really all you need to do is press the I agree and then request the flight. So let's take a look at a pilot flown flight here. Here's one from Montgomery. So you can choose origin and destination FBOs. The list of FBOs that we have in our system is going to come up here as an option for you. They've probably gone over this in some of the coordination sessions. This is really a preference, give you the ability to state your preference for FBOs. And then they probably also talked about the mission assistant. Right now, we're not really using mission assistants because of the COVID situation. But in the future, if you would want a mission assistant on your flight, that would be the place to choose that. And then you go ahead and click request or tap request this mission like you would in the web app. So let me point out a couple of other features here that might make this a little bit more useful. You can set filters up above. So I can either specify wing, and that would only show obviously flights in and out of the wing. I can specify a particular airport, like you can do with the web app, and also I can specify a date range. One other thing you can do on here is you can set favorites, or really it's a kind of a bookmark. So if I want to consider this flight, for example, from Montgomery to San Diego on the 4th, I would tap that heart, and then it would become part of my saved list. And then I can go up here and I can see only the favorites. I can go back to those bookmarks and see the ones that I had sort of saved as a shortcut. So I encourage you to use this. It's a good opportunity when you have a little bit of downtime to maybe scroll through list of flights and see what might be of interest to you. So that's pretty much everything on the available missions list. Then in terms of what you can do when you have a flight and you're managing your flight on the day of. So the center point for that is going to be this My Missions. And it's going to show you first flights that you have upcoming. And you have a couple of different options here. The first is the itinerary. And the itinerary is similar to the view that you would get in the email that's sent to you. But instead of having to look it up in your email box, it's right here, and it's in a nice mobile-friendly format. So again, this would have all the same information, contact information for all the different parties, breakdown of the weights on the passengers and all the baggage, and then routing for all the legs. So if you need to contact the volunteers on either the ground leg or the linking leg, if there's multiple legs, all that information should be there. And then in case you should have to contact any of the physicians, that information is all there as well. One thing about the mission loading here, and in particular the companions, now with the one-time waiver process, the coordinators are collecting the waivers from the passengers in advance. That, of course, only applies to the companions that they know about in advance. If you have any suspicion that perhaps the companion that showed up for your flight is not the same as the one that's in the manifest for the flight, this would be the place to be able to check that. Because if that person is different, then you're going to want to get a waiver from them plain side. Okay. And then I also want to point out this flight risk assessment feature. This is something that we've added recently. It's essentially kind of a standard frat, if you're familiar with that. And it's not at all required, but it's something we definitely encourage you to use just as a safety tool. And it's something that Rich put together with in conjunction with his safety officers. Basically, what you do is you go through and you assign yourself a score for each of these categories in terms of assessing the risk in these various areas. And then it'll come up with a score at the bottom. And really, it's just a guideline for you to be able to see where the mission falls in terms of the risk assessment. If you have any questions about that, you can always contact Rich, or just use it for your own judgment in terms of a safety tool for the flight. We don't keep track of it or use it in any kind of other capacity other than that. Then if you do want to file a waiver for the flight, and again, the plane side waivers are now optional. So you can either choose to get a plane side waiver if you particularly want to have a waiver that's between you and the passengers and companions. Or, is the case I mentioned, if a companion shows up that's not on the original manifest, you have any reason to believe that we may not have gotten a waiver in advance, then you would also want to get a plane side waiver. So there's the link to that is just right there. So that's easy for you to do, and then get the signatures and then submit it at the end using this checkbox. As always with the plane side waivers, when you're submitting the waiver, you do need to be connected to the internet and have internet connectivity. So when you check that green box or that green check mark, make sure that you see the message at the end that says the waiver was saved. If you get a blank screen or nothing happens, then that means that the waiver was not saved. So you either have to try again or use a paper version of the waiver. Then the other option that we've added since we've started with the one-time waivers is you have the ability to view the waivers that have been filed for this flight. So this would be, again, if you wanted to double check that the companions who have signed waivers are the ones who have shown up for your flight. In this particular case, there aren't any because I think it's Mickey Mouse flight. Let's see about this one. Yeah, same with this one. Since this is a test account, I'm using our test pilot account. Probably don't have data for that. And then the other thing you have access to is the discussion thread. And in some of the other coordination sessions, they've probably talked about the discussion thread feature. And you may have interacted with this at some point during your experience with previous flights. Basically, once you're assigned to a flight, then you're added to the discussion thread that applies to the entire itinerary, which means all of the legs on your mission plus any of the legs on any other mission on the flight. So if you're on a return, it would be the outbound and vice versa. And the idea is that if there's any relevant information about any of those flights, it might be relevant or of interest to you. So this is essentially like a threaded discussion, and should you have to refer to any information that was a part of that threaded discussion, for example, it could be something that you and one of the linking pilots discussed and decided along the course of the flight, any interaction you might have had with an Earth Angel, that type of thing, that would all be in this discussion thread. So it's handy to be able to have access to this sometimes on the day of your mission. So I think that's all there is on this part of it. for your upcoming flights. And then if you, on your past flights, you'll have some of these options as well as a link to the mission report to file. And we definitely encourage you to file the mission report using the app because first of all, it's a lot simpler. It's great to do the mission report right after you've completed the flight. Ideally, when you're in your plane, you have the HOPS meter in front of you. And then also, commonly, you're going to have taken your photos with your phone. And so the way the mission report function on the phone enables you to take those photos off of the photo gallery on your app and just upload them there. So it's really by far the easiest way to file your mission report and just get it done. So your link to mission reports will be in this flight section under past flights. And once your mission report is filed, should you want to go back and look at it for your records, then that would also be accessible on the past flights. You can see what you filed and make sure that you did it. And then there is also a link under the flights menu to file mission reports, which will list all of the mission reports that you have outstanding at that particular time. So you can do it that way too. But I think it's handy if you can do it from your My Flights link, because then you know exactly which one you're filing for. So that the two features having to do with finding flights, or if you're an Earth Angel, the driving opportunities, and then on the day of the flight or on the day of your drive, you'd use My Missions to get information about those upcoming flights or past flights. So let me go through some of the other features here that are accessible from the app. If you tap the profile, this has your basic information. It's great to be able to use this to keep the coordinators up to date on your latest email addresses, phone numbers, any kind of updates there are to the contact information. Make sure that all that is up to date for them. But particularly your email address, we really depend on that, obviously, and your mobile phone number, because we're increasingly dependent on that for SMS messages. Under contact, there you have the ability to contact the coordinators through a support ticket using this feature. So you can use this for any questions you might have for them, whether they be mission related or not. You can also use it to create help tickets for me. If you find anything wrong with the app, those will be forwarded on to me. And then settings, there's a number of settings here that you can go through and update, but I wanted to just focus on a couple of them here. The first one is email preferences. So if we tap on that, that's going to again give you an opportunity to verify that your email address is correct. And you have the ability to block emails here. So right now this is turned off. If that slider is over on the left, that means that's turned off, so my emails are not blocked. Let me just talk about a little bit what that means. We have two basic kinds of emails that we send. One are mass emails, we call, and they're generally informational, things like notifications about upcoming events or the types of things that we send to a broad audience. And then there's coordination related emails, which would be things like mission itinerary forms, what we call the begging emails or the plea mails. This function will not block those. So anything having to do with coordination or that's critical, what we consider mission critical, will go through regardless of the setting. This really only applies to those kind of informational emails. And then You also have the ability to control the settings for your different email lists. And the most important of these is the missions available list. So we send an email twice a week with a list of missions available, and that goes out on Mondays and Thursdays. If you're not receiving that, this is definitely the first thing to check. Make sure that you're actually subscribing, because you have the ability to subscribe and unsubscribe yourself to that list. So make sure that's selected. If for some reason you don't want to receive that email for some period of time, let's say you're going on vacation or your plane's down, that type of thing, then you could turn that off, and that will temporarily unsubscribe yourself from that list, and then come back, turn that back on again when you're ready to have that list go on again. We have a couple of other email lists that we use less frequently, like the transplant notification and things like that. You can also manage your subscriptions to those here. So let's see, availability is another one that we would really love to be able to use availability more, so that we're not sending you things when you've already told us that you're not available. Right now, that information is not being updated that regularly, and so we definitely encourage you in particular to use the mobile app to do that, as it's a convenient place to do that. The main thing here is to tell us if you are not at all available, which would be this top checkbox. So if you tap that and check that box and then use the green check mark to save that, then that gives us an indication that right now you're not available for whatever reason. It could be temporary or could be semi-permanent. Then that's going to inform us when we do things like make phone calls and that type of thing. Then I'd like to talk a little bit about the push notifications. I'm sure you're all familiar with the concept of push notifications. I just sent myself recently one here. This one is indicating that a passenger that you have flown before, and a mission has just been added for a passenger that you've flown before. We find that pilots like to fly the same passengers. And so this is an example of one of the different kinds of push notifications that we send out. So if you do not want push notifications, then you can use this link here and turn that off. You just simply have to uncheck that box, and then you won't receive those push notifications. In some cases, you might also have to give the app permission to get push notifications. So that's something that you would do in your system settings, privacy settings, and that would be depending on the device you're on. But once you've done that, once you've given the Angel Flight West mobile app permission to send you push notifications, then you can also control them through this. And I recommend doing that because that's just a simpler way to manage your push notifications for our app. And then you can also give us updates on your aircraft in case you have any changes in that, especially for renters. Wiley Post is fortunate enough to have an Aranca. And then if you have any information and updates to your pilot profile, that would be done here. Primarily what we would be interested in there is your home base airport, should that change. And let's see, and then also if you have any reason to log out, the link to the logout is also under settings. Generally speaking, you don't need to log out of your app. So no really reason to use that. All right, so that's a quick tour of the app. Let me go through the questions in the chat and see what we got here. Multi-select wings on the app. Yes, that I agree. I think that's a great idea. And then, yeah, so in terms of the app getting hung up and the time it takes for the search results, that is obviously dependent on your internet connection. And I know that we have had some issues with some of the iOS builds where it does get kind of permanently hung up. So we're still looking on that, looking into that. I would definitely make sure that you have the latest version of the app. If you don't have your app set to automatically update, then make sure that that you're updating it. And particularly if you see some feature in here that you don't see on your version of the app, then make sure that you're using the latest version. Let's see. Wendy is asking, how does someone sign on a phone? Yeah, typing is, I think, the only option. Do you want to ask that question directly, Wendy? So maybe clarify. I think I unmuted you if you want to go ahead and ask.
Oh, it's just, thank you, Stephan. It was just wondering how someone signs, since we really need a signature when the phone's only print.
Got it. Okay, let me show you that. So if I go to file a waiver, then what I do here is I would tap this block, and then I get a space where I can sign and use my finger to do that, which is not super easy, but you know, I think at this point people are pretty accustomed to signing devices like this. So just make sure that you click that green save button, and then that signature should appear in the space so you can keep track of which signatures have been filled in and which haven't. And then make sure that any of these signatures that are required, it will tell you at the end. With the one-time waiver now, because we're not necessarily collecting all of the signatures as we did before with the plain side waiver, you can have a situation where really the only person you need to sign is one companion. So all the other signatures would not be required in this case.
Thank you.
Sure. Can you file one report for multiple legs? That's a great question. In the web app, you can do that. So for example, let's say you decide to fly someone to their treatment, and then it's going to be a short appointment and you're going to wait for them and you're going to fly them back. So you have two legs and you want to just file that once, and you have one hops time that encompasses both of those the round trip time. Yeah, you can do that with the web app. You can select both those legs and you can file one mission report that covers them both. With the mobile app, you cannot. And really that just has to do with keeping the user interface as simple as possible. So the way to do that would be to split the time. If it was 2 hours round trip, file 2 mission reports, each with 1 hour. If you are in a situation where you have 2 passengers on the plane for one leg, you are flying 2 missions, you're going to see those show up independently or as separate missions. There again, you do the same thing. You would have to split that. And if you really have a complicated situation, you might want to just do that on the web app. Hopefully that answers that question. Yes, I have had multiple reports of the app where it shows notifications that don't exist. So I work with a web developer or an app developer rather, and he's currently looking into this. So we are looking into that issue. I have no explanation for that. And I only see that on iOS, and I'm not sure if it has something to do with Apple's notification platform. How can I be sure waivers are signed prior to the mission? So when you go to My Missions, under upcoming missions, you do have this link to view waivers. Unfortunately, because this is dummy data and you were using the test pilot account, I can't actually show you what that looks like. But what happens is you'll see a list of all the waivers that have been filed, that we have on file, the one-time waivers. And then you'll be able to tap on each one of those and it will bring up the PDF facsimile of that waiver. So it'll show you that signature. And so you should be able to compare that fairly well with the people who are standing in front of you, waiting to get on the plane, to make sure that you have a waiver signed for everybody. And thank you very much, by the way, for doing that, because it is important, as you know, for us to make sure that we have waivers signed for everybody on the flight. And we are the coordinators, I should say, not me. The coordinators are collecting all of those, but obviously they don't know when a person shows up who's not supposed to be there. And let's see, when we see the waiver forms in the mission information, we're inclined to sign them in the field. I would say if you have any doubt that the person has signed a waiver, then yeah, go ahead and have them sign. It doesn't hurt to have more waivers. It's obviously better to have more waivers than no waivers. And the passengers have been briefed that there's always a chance that a pilot will ask. So even though they have signed the one-time waiver, they are aware of the fact that the pilots can ask them to sign again. So it shouldn't be a big deal. In terms of having kind of some checkbox that says all the waivers have been signed, again, that comes down to the issue of not knowing that the person who's there with you is the person who signed. So we don't really have the ability to be sure and to say that definitively all the waivers have been signed. Makes it a little tricky, but that's kind of the issue we're dealing with. You actually shouldn't be seeing any more nasty notes from Sherry. Well, I should say they were never nasty. Firm notes from Sherry, because really it's not incumbent on you anymore to get those plane side waivers signed. They are only for your benefit, and should you choose to do it for yourself.
And I sent them with love.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So Tom asks if you're using the app on an iPad. The signatures don't need to work with a pencil. I think it's probably easier than using your finger, but the interface should work the same either way. All right, any other questions? You can feel free to type them in the chat. You can also raise your hand, I think, and hopefully I will see that. I don't know if there's anything anybody on the coordination team would like to add that I may have missed. Please feel free to jump in.
I guess I would just say, you can always send an email to Stephan. I don't know if you put that in there, Stephan, or gave it out. But additionally, you can always pass any suggestions on or comments, or if you're having trouble, let the missions team know. Some of the things John can walk you through and help you fix. Others will always pass that message back on to Stephan, and so he'll get back to you about it.
Yeah, as I mentioned at the beginning, John will definitely help you with any individual issues you might have, and whether it's logging in or maybe something doesn't look right in your version of the app, that kind of thing. And so that's the best way to troubleshoot kind of individual problems that you have. And then also, if you have suggestions, obviously always love to hear those. I have a session tomorrow, which is more of an interactive kind of user panel where we're going to talk about features of the the application and the app as well, and other kinds of technology. So that's a great opportunity also to give us feedback on the app and the other technology. All right, let me just put in my email address here since Jeff asked. It's pretty simple. It's webmaster@angel-flight-west.org. And if you want to message missions team, then they'll forward it on to me. All right, so thank you again for hanging out for a little while and getting the tour of the app. Again, let me know if you have any other thoughts by email. Thanks for attending, and I hope to see you on my group tomorrow as well. Make sure you check out the schedule of events for the next couple of days and see if there's any other sessions that might be of interest to you. Thanks again, and we'll see you later.